I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. All right. So what I'll do is I will intro and then press 42 minutes, and then we'll go from there. Ready?
Good.
All right. Welcome to 42, Two Souls, One Journey, a raw and unedited look into our lives as humans. Based on the 21 grams experience, a scientist named Dr. Duncan MacDougall in 1907 concluded that the human soul weighs 21 grams. In this podcast / videocast, we are going to explore that no matter what our lives look like on paper, our souls are similar. On this podcast, we have Jordon Bond-Gorr, a creative storyteller, a community activist, fashionista, drag race enthusiast, fellow Leo, and I'm going to go out and say it, sexy motherfucker. Hey, Jordon.
Hi, Shafiq. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Oh,
Thank you
42 minutes.
I feel so great about myself now.
Yeah, you should. You're fantastic. You're an amazing human being. I have a feeling that we're going to go around throwing some gay slangs, and we might mix up some gender pronouns in this conversation. Like we might be like, hey girl, that's great. Or it's called a fashionista. Should we let our straight audience know your pronouns? Do you care about that or no?
You know what? I always care about my pronouns, even when I say I don't. So it's important to take up space in the world. So my name is Jordon Bond-Gorr. I go by they, them pronouns. I will accept he, him at times, but I prefer they, them. Okay. I don't identify as trans. I identify as gender queer or gender non-binary. So.
That's so interesting. I feel like we worked together for about a year or more, and I didn't know you went by them, they pronouns. Is that new?
So to be very honest, in the office, I kind of didn't really make a big deal about it because I felt like it was a big enough deal to be in an office with gay men and feeling like I fit in and feeling that pressure to be a gay man, not a gay gender queer person. So I really kept it under wraps, but it's something I'm trying to be a little more vocal about these days. So.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, one of the things that, like, moving to Winnipeg, I'm living with Raheem, and gender pronouns are so normal, like non-gender pronouns, or gender, I don't know what the word is, but like they and them are so prevalent here. And I feel like every time I meet someone, I ask them their gender pronouns, which is something I never did in Toronto. It's so, I don't know, it's funny because sometimes I trip myself over some of the words, but I feel like I want to be better at this. So let's welcome they into the conversation.
They say thank you.
Say that again?
I said awkward.
Yeah. So let's start by telling people. So the whole premise of the podcast is that no matter what we look like on paper, our souls are journeying the same way. So is it fair for us to say, Jordon, that on paper you would be a cis white male, X amount of age, grew up in Ontario, single, no kids. I don't know what else to say. And how does that look different for me on paper? So let's confirm that. That sounds correct, or would you add anything else to that?
Sounds good. I noticed you didn't use my age. I'm 40 years old. Like
what? Welcome to 40.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. Actually, no, it is great to be here. Like 40 is like an age I never thought I'd get to. But yeah, I think that's right. I just also would say that I identify as a settler of European origin in the space in which we live. So.
Perfect. So I want to actually let out, like, so clearly on paper, Jordon and I are similar in some ways and different in some ways. I don't identify as a European background. I think that's really about it, and our differences.
We're exactly the same.
Yeah, outside of that.
Basically.
Right. So I want to come back to why you didn't think you were going to get to 40. Like, or do we wait for that later on?
I can tell you right now, to be very honest, you know, I am somebody who has had a colorful life. And so I've done a lot of things in my life with a sense of sort of like fatalistic, whatever will happen. In my 20s, in my early 20s, I just didn't think I was going to make it to 30 because I was using drugs quite heavily. And I just didn't see a future that was possible for me. I really felt very nihilistic about the future. I felt like my life didn't amount to anything. There was nothing to really like be excited about. So I kind of had that sort of blase-da attitude, I guess, about it. But I mean, no longer do I have that attitude. Now I'm like, oh my God, 40 years old. I need to get as much more life in as I can. Like, you know, let's make it count.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like that's I didn't know that about you again. And it's so interesting because Jordan and I first met at the GMSH, which is the Gay Men's Sexual Health Alliance, when Jordan was invited myself and a few others to be part of a podcast where we got to speak about Party and Play. And it's based on, it's a campaign called Party and Play Your Way.
Yes.
Am I correct? Yeah.
It is now no longer called that, but
Okay.
it's changed so much. Yeah.
Well, I am someone who's grateful that you actually are at 40, and I think you're going to do some amazing things. Like, you are such a community activist. I feel like one thing that my soul is attracted to your soul is that you really demystify this myth that people who party and play don't give a fuck about things, are, you know, selfish and self-indulgent. But you are a person who I think who parties and plays, who's done, you know, you went from the route of the AA group of people to where you are now. And you are so happy and so generous in sharing your growth and making sure that the community rises with you. You know, and I want to say, if you weren't around in 40, this wouldn't have happened. So welcome to your 40s. I'm excited about it. Can you tell us more? So tell us more about the campaign. Tell me more what's happened with the campaign since the last time.
So much has happened. So the podcast that you were part of is going to be launched probably no later than February of next year with the launch of our website,
Okay.
Which will be called infopmp.com. Let's not go with that. But, the website's not something I have my fingers in a lot of right now, so it's not something I pay attention to. But so it's safe to say the campaign's kind of already launched in a large way. Like, part of GMSH, what we do is we build capacity with people, like we build capacity with our member organizations to actually go and do work with gay men in the field. Like, I don't go in the field and do work with gay men. Well, I mean, I do, but in a very different way. Not affiliated with my job. So we're building that capacity, right? And they're already doing that. We've already got Alliance members who are out there and they're working with guys who PNP. They're doing online outreach. They're trying to connect with our community, which is a really important piece of the puzzle. Even though we haven't launched a website and we don't have ads and all that jazz, like, it's already sort of softly launched. We did a survey this summer, which is actually what I'm working on today, is a presentation for that, which is stressing me out. But we did a survey. We had 417 guys across the province of Ontario respond, which was really exciting. We got their insights into like what they needed in terms of access to supplies and information about harm reduction, where they were currently getting that stuff. It was really exciting to see like people respond to these questions in a way that was meaningful, and to also like read their comments and hear what's going on for them. And also generally a sense of appreciation for the work that GMSH was doing around this. Because it wasn't stigmatizing and it wasn't about like honing in on like, do you have a problem with drugs? Like that kind of thing. It's like, here it is. Like, we know that you're using drugs. We just want to support you where you're at, which to me is like the powerful message of harm reduction, which I was excited about. So lots of other stuff coming down the pipe. I can't reveal it all on popular podcasts such as yours, because then, you know, I'll get fired. But lots of good stuff is coming, and we're collaborating with lots of other folks too. There's a lot of good things happening all over the place in regards to PNP. So
Wow, I'm excited. I can't wait for someone who's on this journey and always looking for some really great supports that you have from the get-go provided. I'm excited to see where it goes. And for our audience members, we'll use this platform to share it, which gives me an excuse to bring you back in February to talk about it.
yes, and everybody listen to Shafiq's podcast, because just made me do this in one take, and like, how many takes?
Well,
I'm not the one running the show.
right.
You got that word wrong right back there. We need you to do
So a little background for everybody. After I did the podcast with Jordan, he had invited me back to co-host a recording of the podcast to talk about our experience in the podcast. And that's kind of where we got to know each other so much better. And I think work through some of the things that, I mean, I know I always want to come into a plate very composed and ready to go. And I don't like people arguing with me about things. I think I'm right all the time. And with Jordan, we really, you know, we had to communicate about these things. You had a vision, I had a vision, and then we had to come together to execute this podcast, but also come to a point to be where we were both okay and comfortable with saying, great, we have a point of view. It's different from each other. And that's okay.
Yeah, that was an interesting learning for me. I remember like being a little surprised at one episode where I was like, wait a second, he thinks that about that? Like, whoa. And learning how not to like totally excommunicate somebody who say you can't be on this project, but learning how to work around that. Also, two Leos working on a thing together, that's always a lot of fun because
Right.
you had a vision and I had a vision, and it was like never the same show me. But we really did make something, and the end when people hear it, I think is quite wonderful and magical,
Right.
and wouldn't have been the same had you not been there with your different perspectives. So.
Well, thank you for the invite. Jordan, I think the camera's cutting your face off. Like, yeah, let's see your amazing face and hat and fashion. There we go.
Ah,
I know, it's so handsome, right, guys? Glad we did this. So Jordan, tell us about how did you get to GMSH? How did you get to this point in your life?
How did I get to this point in my life? Well, I was
Yeah.
born in 1980. It was a tough birth. And then fast forward to 2018, I was working at St. Stephen's Community House. So short background, my background is in banking professionally. I spent 14 years working at a bank. Yeah, I won't say which bank, but don't bank there.
All banks, just don't bank there.
But I worked at a bank, and then I ended up leaving the bank during a prolonged period of disability leave. And I just decided to go back to school and try other things out. And I got involved with St. Stephen's Community House. They're a homeless drop-in shelter in Toronto. They provide meals. They do job training. They do like housing. They do it all for their clients who are some of the most disadvantaged and marginalized people in the city. And I went there because they had a crystal meth peer program. Like where I could go in and earn $10 for making harm reduction kits during the day and talk a little bit about drug use. And through that, I got involved with their peer training program. And through that, I got a job as a crystal meth project, which was a one-off project working with people who were street involved who use crystal meth. Excuse me, I shouldn't have taken a swig of Diet Coke before I did this. I'm belching on your podcast.
Raw and unedited, that's what we're going with.
So I started working there, and that contract came to an end because the LINs got defunded by Doug Ford. All of you who love Doug Ford right now, just saying.
Is that the guy on your pin?
No, that's Rob Ford. That's his dead brother, who I wish we had back because he was harmless compared to Doug Ford. I mean, I met both of them, and they're not really great. They weren't great people, but great politicians now. Anyway, I'm making it political. You live in Manitoba, you don't have to worry about the Fords anymore. You got your own kettle of fish there. But
Right.
Anyway, fast forward. So the contract came up, and I had met Dane, my boss currently, to talk about the crystal. Their program, because I'd been in Vice magazine last year talking about crystal meth, and he wanted my opinion on things as an interested community member. And at the time, I also happened to be working on a group with ACT called the Kiki, which was a drop-in for guys who party and played. So it was really, I was tickled pink to be consulted about anything, but I did not think about working for GMSH. I knew there was a job opening there that my partner at the time, his boss, had recommended to me, but I didn't want to work with GMSH. I was like, I don't want to work with gay men. I don't want to work in party and play. I just want to be a community activist with like a limited reach, limited sway, fighting against the power. I don't want to be co-opted by the man. But as fate would have it, I decided to apply. I applied after the deadline, and I finished my resume and cover letter on the train to Belleville, and I had lots of spelling mistakes on my cover letter. So I have no idea how I got this job, but I went for the interview, and I was really actually sold because Dane had sold me on the campaign earlier when we first met, and I was excited by what they were doing. And I was excited that they were taking this sort of holistic, across the spectrum approach to PMP, not just honing in on like crystal meth is bad, GHB is bad, you shouldn't do them. People lose their teeth and their livelihoods and their boyfriends and everything to crystal meth. Don't do it, don't do it. That kind of campaign. Because I mean, I've seen that. I've been around for a while. I've lived through what was my third crystal meth epidemic in Toronto. It's an epidemic. It is. In some ways it is, but like I just find that the discourse we have around it is so problematic and not helpful and not reflecting lived realities for people. Like I don't wake up in a state of crisis, right? Like I wake up, I go to work, and sometimes I'll be using drugs in my day, right? And sometimes it's problematic for me, but like it's not an epidemic or a crisis for me. It's just my reality, and I need people and supports that meet me there, not like try and drag me over to this like you need to stop using kind of place. Because if I'm not ready to, I'm not ready to.
Right.
So that was what attracted me about the GMSH's approach, is they acknowledge that. They really wanted to do it in like this sexy way that was like kind of, you know, how guys in the scene kind of are. You know, we're all super serious about sexiness and stuff. So like that, exactly like
Right, right.
that. That's my sexy P&P thing.
Yeah.
Shafiq, don't say anything.
No, I was trying not to. You know, Jordan, it's so, for me, somebody who's been on this journey, who, when I relapsed or when I hit my rock bottom, you know, the first thing, so for the audience out there, I'm on the road of recovery from crystal meth, or on a journey. I'm not quite sure where I am with it, but I did hit a point in my life where I hit rock bottom, where everything sort of fell apart for me, and I wanted to figure out how to get healthier. And I think my only option at that point, which was 2017, was recovery. You know, like, you do this, you did this, you did this, and you have to adhere to all these things in order to be a normal functioning human being.
Mhm.
And while it was a great place to be at, it's just not my reality. I think, just like, it's not my lived experience. It's something, you know, like, when you are on the addiction journey, you're living through this day in and day out. And if you're told that, you know, you either hit rock bottom or you're sober, and then there's no space in between for you, and if you don't sit in one or the other, then you're a lost soul, quote unquote. You know, in meeting with Jordon, that was such a, like, and what I think GMSH is providing is a space, because most of us live in that in between space for years or decades for some people. And I don't know, it's so fucked up for me that we don't focus on that, right? And for me personally, and I'm so glad that it exists, and that you're the only person I know actually out there who said, fuck it, I'm just gonna do, like, you're in it, you're navigating it, and you're happy to share that with people. And GMSE is okay to tell you, you're okay, you're still a good human being, you're normal, you're all these things, you're in this phase, and we'll meet you where you are.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get here? Like, what?
So it's interesting. How did I get here? Because I don't really regard myself as being at a here or a destination with this, because it's still an ongoing process for me. Like, I come from a similar background. When I first was identified substances as a problem in my life, I was told, you're an addict, you'll always be an addict, you need to go to meetings for the rest of your life. And I was in my 20s. And like, that was the message that I got. I've internalized that over a number of years. It's been hard to escape that sort of pull, like, but if I think I am addressing your question correctly, like, I think for me, I had to accept the fact that I was in the in-between place, because there was no other choice. I could either keep going into like complete and utter like nihilistic shit, like use and self-destructiveness, or something had to shift. And that shift actually happened because I became a peer worker. To be very honest, I had been in that sort of shame spiral, thinking like, oh, there's nowhere else to go but down with the ship, using every day, doing nothing but using every day. It was really awful. And when St. Stephen's came around, it was the first time I'd encountered the message of harm reduction, which is, you're a good, worthwhile person, period. Like, the drugs don't change your fundamental worth as a human being. That never was in question, right? Whereas I always thought it was. I always thought the drugs made me a not worthwhile human being. I thought they sort of tainted everything. So when I got that job working at St. Stephen's, it was the first time that I had been accepted for who I was and where I was at, without any judgment. Like, people were happy to see me. If I didn't show up, they didn't like berate me for, you know, not being there, or, you know, tell me about how horrible my drug use was making them feel. It was like they were concerned with me,
Mm-hmm.
and not just me, but like they saw me, they treated me as a peer, as a worthwhile value. Like, my opinion was valued, and I'm like, holy shit, you know, people actually have value what I have to say about this particular field of endeavor. And it was really, really affirming for me. And it gave me hope that like I could accept that part of myself eventually too, because to me, there's something I did learn in 12-step recovery that I still think is very valid, which is self-acceptance is like key. If I don't accept myself, I'm always going to be at war with those parts of myself that I don't like. And those parts of myself are going to have a lot of more control. And so for me, like, that's shame, and the shame that I, you know, about myself, that sort of permeates my day-to-day existence. Um, like, I still struggle. Like, there's still days where I am self-destructive. There are still days where I feel like I don't accept myself as somebody who uses drugs. But I also have to remember there was a lot more years of conditioning to believe that somehow the only good person is a person who is recovering in this exact way.
Right.
And so I've had to overcome that. Not that and by the way, folks, I'm not dissing the 12-step movement at all. I have a lot of love and support for that movement. It was a huge part of my life, met some amazing people there. But for me, it didn't work because of my own internal trauma and shame and whatnot. For me, it always reinforced the fact that like, somehow I was bad before I got into recovery, and the only way to be good was to be in recovery. And that's a false binary, but it's still a journey. Like every day I have to wake up and make a decision not to like kind of go with my lesser angels and or believe the shit that I tell myself about myself. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think also for any of the AA people out there, because we're going to have friends who are in the recovery program who are seeing this. We're not, neither Jordon or, well, I know I'm not taking a side of saying AA is bad and the recovery journey is bad. I think everybody has their own space to be in. And I think for me, there was only two options at the very beginning, and that's not my reality, right? And this is recovery for me. Talking to Jordon or my friends and talk about how my journey is going and how maybe each day is harder than the other is more my reality than saying I can't conform into these boundaries. And just as creatives, we're taught not to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's ridiculous to think that there's only like one way of doing things. And the other thing is that we always frame drug use as a problem because we're always looking at the people who have the worst outcomes with drugs.
Yes.
You know, literature will tell us and scientific studies will tell us that the fact is that most people who qualify as substance dependent phase out of that naturally in their lives. Bulk of people who are addicted to substances don't like end up in treatment. They don't go to recovery houses. They just naturally age out of their addiction because life kicks in and they're responsible and they make different choices. For folks like myself, I'll speak for myself. I have other things other than just the drugs. The drugs are a symptom of underlying conditions in my life, such as like trauma, internalized homophobia, my HIV status, all that stuff. So that makes the drug addiction a harder thing to shake naturally. So you got to really look at the fact that we're looking at the most problematic of the problematic when we look at people who are using drugs, and then we're extrapolating that everybody who uses drugs is just like that person. You know, they're just waiting to like fall off into like the black pit of despair, but it's not true. A lot of people use drugs successfully. A lot of people don't have problems with them. I'm not saying that we don't pay attention to the people who do, because they need our support, and they point to the other underlying sort of mental health issues that we don't deal with in our society in general. But like, we need to stop fixating on this idea that all drug use is bad and that everybody who uses drugs is a potential addict, or certain drugs is a potential addict, because it's bullshit. And people need different things, right? And why should we let people fall to rock bottom? Why can't we give them a soft, cushy pillow to land on, maybe like halfway down? Yeah. So.
Oh my God, I love that. Why can't we? And I think, in talking to friends and people, that's what people want. You want to have that soft, cushy landing before for some people, you want the soft, cushy landing, and for some people, they need to hit rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
But everyone's rock bottom looks so different. And I feel like, one of the things I always got was when I started telling people about my addiction, they were like, well, you don't look like an addict. And I was like, what does an addict look like? Tell me. And it was always so interesting. You're right. Like, media doesn't give us like the doctors, the lawyers, the people who look like regular functioning people who are addicts as well. Like, and addiction is people are addicted to so many things. I think, COVID is one of those times where like we're stuck in a space with each other, happily or unhappily. And then I think people are really finding out what their addiction and mental health issues are more than before, right? Like, you can't hide now from working too many hours. You have to sit home with that person you don't like, that you married or are dating or sleeping with. Yeah. And figure this shit out.
Thanks, coronavirus.
Yeah. Did you ever think you were ever going to say that? Thanks, coronavirus.
No, I'm still not sure I'm going to say thanks. Actually, no, I am. COVID-19 is what it is. Like, it's one of those moments where it's just like, that I get. It's beyond my control. I'm like, it is what it is. I'm not thankful, but because it's been a hard year for all of us, for a lot of us, but a lot of loss this year. I had another friend die recently, which was crazy. Anyway, you don't need to know that on your podcast. Let's keep it that.
No, but that's real life there, right? I mean, that's part of, everybody has lost it. I think if you haven't, like, everyone's experienced some sort of loss this year, no matter how old you are. You've either lost going to school, you've lost being with your friends, you've lost loved ones. Everybody, I think, who is alive and at an age of consciousness in 2020 realize that we all lost. Loss is real for everybody. And it doesn't matter what scale you get it. It's like either you lost going to school to see your friends, or you lost your mom, like, or a friend. Like, that's all that still, people are still experiencing loss and the trauma the same way.
That
Similar.
does give me a little bit of hope, because like I know that I'm not going through it alone, right? And even though sometimes it feels that way, and like for me, it's actually none of my losses have been directly related to COVID. I had 3 friends die this year. Max, my friend Max, who killed himself, and then a friend, and then sort of an acquaintance friend who died of a coronary embolism or pulmonary embolism last week. Like very young, 49 too. So they've been harder losses in certain respects because they're not like what I expected. Um, and a lot of them actually are sort of connected to drug use, which is really hard. So, but you know, we're all experiencing that loss, as you say, and like, I think it's important to like grieve, and not that I'm great at it, but I'm getting better. So,
I think, again, sorry for your loss, because I know that's loss just sucks, but thank you for sharing with it, because I think something we also need to do is talk about losses, right? And I feel like an interesting, like Max is why that podcast, or why is Inforge PNP, like the PNP campaign happened. Isn't that, am I making that up, or is that that's
well,
something true, right?
Max has a hand in it for sure.
Yeah.
Like Max's hand is definitely all over that. I remember Max and I talked about doing a podcast well before I worked at GMSH, where we would talk about like the real lives of guys who partied in Toronto. And then when I told him we were doing a podcast at GMSH, which I totally thought was my idea, which he's like my idea. That's our idea. You have to thank me for it. So Max is no longer with us, but I have made a point. The last episode of the podcast, I think, and you know, on your podcast, I will thank Max for consistently being an inspiration, and also for the many, many times he told me that you can't do that, Jordon. People will arrest you if you talk about PNP publicly, and the things he thought that would happen if we talked about this issue openly. But he also is a big reason that, like, I remember Max a lot, because the lack of support where people are at kills people. Max did not die from methamphetamine use. He died because he'd fallen through the cracks to the point where, you know, he was given 2 options to get better, and neither one of those were about anybody supporting him where he was. They were about him leaving his livelihood and stopping the one coping mechanism he had. And like, then he could get help. Then he could grow. And, you know, people telling people that to me isn't helpful. It's like, okay, great. You're going to tell people we're at the very bottom. And these are the only things they're holding on to, right? It's like the fact that he was making money escorting and drugs, which is how he coped with all the other shit that happened in his life, like the prison, the trauma, the child abuse, all that shit. So you're telling somebody to take away their coping strategies? Like, no, like I just really feel like he was a victim of indifference, you know, like so many people are in our society, like at different levels, right? Like, you know, but it really bothered me because he didn't have to die.
So 3 things, I guess, that come into my mind right now. So 1, thank you, Max, because I feel like if it wasn't for, like, we wouldn't have connected over the podcast, and this wouldn't have inspired me to push this forward. So thank you for looking over, like, the angel up there to get us here, because we're here to talk about PNP. 2, you know, what would you tell, so this is a very Oprah question, what would you tell the younger Jordon from 20 years ago, from, oh my God, not 20 years ago, from the younger Jordon who was at the beginning stages of his PNP recovery journey, or his PNP journey? Like, what would you say to him?
What would I say to her?
Yeah, what would you say to her? Yeah.
Well, first I'd toss her hair and just feel her hair, because she had lush hair back then. I had lush hair back then. 20 years ago, so I've been 20 years old. So I not even use drugs at age 20, by the way. 27 is when I was a late bloomer. But what would I say going back and looking at that? I would be like, don't believe everything that everybody is about to tell you. Like, I would not have stopped myself from using, because I think it would have important things to teach me. I still think it does.
Right.
But I would say, don't listen to everybody. Not everybody who offers you help is helpful. Not everybody who offers you help is an expert. And not everybody who says that they know what they're talking about knows what they're talking about. And trust your gut, you know, and listen to your head sometimes. Like, listen to what you're thinking. Like, be critical about things. But I also would have said, like, you know, you don't have to do this as well. Like, you don't have to. It's tough, because for me, like, PNP is a lot of coming from a place where, like, it's a lot of unhealed stuff in my life, a lot of like stuff in my past. And I would have been like, you don't need to seek validation like this. You are a beautiful person and you have a lot to give. Leave the bank. I would have said leave the bank. But
Okay,
like,
good.
what I told that kid, he had to go through what he had to go through to get
Right.
this place, right? And I'm at this place now with at least somewhat of an somewhat 40-year-old kind of intelligent mind to do things. And I mean, I just would have been like, don't trust everything everybody's telling you, because I was very susceptible. I believed everything everybody told me,
Right.
even when I felt like it wasn't right or true, and that really fucked me up a lot because I believe the truth about myself through other people's eyes, which is common for people who've undergone trauma to not, like, have self-confidence. But I really wish I'd listened to my gut a little bit more.
Do you think, like, it's such an interesting place, because I have the same mindset where I'm like, if I hadn't done this, I wouldn't be here. And I'm so thankful for those mishaps. Like, I don't know how to say this to people where, like, I'm like, go do it. Like, go do it, experience it yourself. No matter what I can tell you, I can warn you about these things or give you my input, but people don't necessarily listen. I feel like there's something about us as humans or as souls, even though we know it in our gut, we still need to experience, we need to do it in order to be able to, I don't know, like, I don't know how to even frame this. Like, right? Like, would you, so I think for me, the best thing is, and I think you said this nicely, is that, fine, go ahead, do it. Know that I'm here to support you and I love you.
Mm-hmm.
So that, go fall.
Yeah. Go fall on your ass, girl.
Yeah.
Fall on it, fall on it, fall on it. Fall with it up in the air, fall with it down on the
It's twerk that ass down to the floor, and I'm here to love you and support you at the end when you need it.
You've never seen me twerk, Shafiq. You don't want that. So.
No.
Look at all this. This is not twerking.
Yeah. Isn't it?
What's happening below the table? You can't.
Yeah. Nobody knows.
No, I like what you're saying though. Like, people are experiential learners. A lot of people are experiential learners, and like, that's the beauty of life. You find out things the hard way. And I think if I'm thinking about my soul, I never think about my soul. So I'm very excited that it's 21 grams, because it's a lot thinner than I am right now.
That's awesome.
Thanks, COVID.
Yeah.
I eat Domino's pizza every other day. Like, oh God. The delivery guy is getting sick of me. But anyway, I digress. Thinking about my soul, like, I think that I have to go through the things that maybe I'm a believer in fate, maybe I believe in destiny, but I think you have to go through things the way you have to go through them. And you don't, why would I want to avoid the mistakes if beautiful things come out of them? Like, everybody quotes that Leonard Cohen song, which is like, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
Right.
From a beautiful song. Copyright infringement, maybe, right there, me quoting that. But it's true. I mean, like, I don't think I would be able to see myself the way I get glimpses of myself these days if I hadn't been through all the hard shit, if I hadn't done the hard things like that, and continue to try and do the hard things. Like, life either hardens you up or it softens you, and I'm hopefully softening up a little bit in my old age. I hope so. I was a very hard child, very hard, very angry, and very angry with myself, and I don't think I'm as angry with myself. But ask me tomorrow, and I might be furious with myself.
Right. I mean, but I think as humans, you can have a day where you're angry with yourself, and you can have a day where you're not angry with yourself, right? Like, that's just how we journey.
How can I be angry with myself if I'm on a friend's podcast? He's getting me to talk about myself, which is my favorite thing in the world.
I really. But you have great words of wisdom to say, and I think what you're sharing with the world and putting yourself out there is, for me, fantastic. So I'm happy to chat with you all the time about this kind of stuff and to tell me all about you. So something interesting that we talk about is, like, choosing, like, when you're in a situation where you got to choose one or the other. So, you can choose to be angry or you can choose not to be angry. Mm-hmm. How do you choose love on days where you don't have love for yourself? Because I know how you give love, and I've been a receiver of unconditional love from you, and knowing when I have tough days or I've relapsed, I can happily come to you and you will shower me with love and make me feel amazing and supportive. But how does Jordon Bond-Gorr choose love on the days? Just how does Jordon Bond-Gorr choose love? Period.
That is a really tough question, Shafiq. Next question, please. As Miss America, I would end world hunger by. How do I choose love? I mean, I don't have a lot of insight into that. I mean, I think I choose love when I wake up every day. like, it's like, okay, we're gonna do this thing because, like, we're just not gonna give up. I don't. I'm not gonna lie to people out there and say that I choose love every day. Sometimes I choose cruelty, and it's something I'm really mindful of these days. It's like I think that with everything that's going on in the world and all this stuff, it can be really easy to get caught up in fear and all that panic, and then I choose to be closed off. But the moments where I choose love are usually moments like this where I'm talking with another human being. And when I recognize that I'm not alone in my struggles, right? Like when you talk about the stuff that's going on for you, that's why I'm happy to jump in with love, because I'm like, oh, I see the humanity in you. I see the shared experience. I see that we're all fucking just trying to like make it work, and we don't know what we're doing. And like, I think sometimes when I offer that to people, it's a little bit of offering it back to myself. Like it's a weird way of doing it. I've got this ass backwards way of doing it. It's like I would joke with people that I'm like trying to save everybody in the province of Ontario from PNP, like sadness and sorrow by like saving them. Then I'll save myself. But there's a little bit of that, like giving to other people reminds me that there is an abundance of love in me, and just waking up every day and trying my best. And the days when I'm real with people, like really real. Like lately, I've been feeling a lot more of that when I've been. I've got my best friend Petra. I don't know if I've talked about her with you, but we went camping a couple times this summer. And we had really interesting and powerful camping trips this summer where I cried a lot and like we got to some real shit. And like, that's where I gave love back to myself, was by being in that moment and being like 100% without like, hey, that kind of guarded like comedic or whatever thing I do to sort of keep people at a distance. Like I was real, and that felt really beautiful and wonderful. So yeah.
How does one replicate that time? Like, so it sounds like it takes a lot of work to get to, camping and outdoors, to get to this real place with yourself. How does, like, if there was a way to replicate it regularly or every day, is there a way? Actually, let's start with, is there a way? And if there is, what would you do, or how would you do it?
I think going off of that sort of idea, like for me, I know what it would take to replicate it, which is like I would have to be willing to show up and be vulnerable a lot more. I know that the choice I'm faced with is never like about like, giving love to myself or not. Am I going to be real in this moment with people, or am I going to like pretend and act? And so it would take a lot of me showing up and like we're doing it right now today. Like I feel like you're at least getting, I'm performing kind of because there's a camera on. There's a certain amount of like realness that's coming because you're asking really great questions and we're talking about things that are important, and there's no mask per se,
right,
other than my masculinity. Right there.
Right, got it.
Like, but showing up and just being real and being vulnerable is what it would take, and it's a moment by moment thing. It's not like I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be vulnerable today. It's like sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm like all guarded and I lie and I tell stories to myself and I pretend things are a certain way and they're not. But sometimes I'm like real and show people my bumpy bits, because I got a lot of bumpy ugly bits, So, yeah.
And I think all that's okay, right? I feel like we need to just let people know it's okay. We don't have Instagram lives. We don't have to look perfect all the time. A friend of mine had once said that, he has depression. And he goes, sometimes I wake up and he calls this person Screama Auntie. And he goes, Screama Auntie just lies on me and I can't move. And I just have to be like, okay, well, today we're just going to stay in bed and Screama Auntie is going to lie on me and we'll cry. And that's, it's for me, it's like when he said it, I was like, oh my god, it's like my Sasha Fierce that comes out. We're like I'm going on stage and I'm going to be this bitch, and you give into it. And I think we are so happy to give into our Sasha Fierce, but we're not happy to give into our un-Sasha Fierce or our
Debbie Downer.
Our Debbie Downer. And I feel like that's just life. Like some days you can wake up as Sasha Fierce, some days you just need to sit with the Debbie Downer and love her back, because really, she just wants a hug.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Like really, we want. But I always hear that, like, extend compassion to yourself, love yourself, love your inner child, and like it always seems so hokey to me until it didn't seem hokey, and then it's like, well, when I'm angry or like upset, because I access most things feeling through anger. Got like a minute left on my gosh. There's usually like a lot of sadness underneath that, right? And I'm not really, I don't like feeling sad because I feel like very like vulnerable and fragile and like delicate, and I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel strong and. But no, really what's needed is I need to comfort that person, this person, me, and be kind to myself and accepting of myself. It's tough. It's really tough to do, and I still haven't mastered it yet, but like you're reminding me of like what I do and the practice of it. So it's kind of good. Maybe this was a very helpful podcast for me to be on, because it's like, I should go be kinder to myself today.
Well,
because I need to.
Well, I know you're prepping for a presentation later, so I know you're stressed about that, and maybe that's where all the unkindness is coming from. Maybe I can just tell you, you're gonna be fucking amazing. You always are. Just go and give him Jordon Bond-Gorr, because, bitch, she's fabulous, and whatever comes out comes out. Like,
I mean, a panel of PhD students, and I've got lived experience, so they know nothing really. I was like, I'm here. I got out of the gay sex orgy to come here and talk to you about my life, so you could all benefit from my learnings.
Right.
I won't be leaving the gay sex orgy to go present. I will probably have a good night's sleep before my presentation.
And the smart thing would be to take the gay sex orgy with you. They're here to learn. They might as well just get the full
experiential learning. Let's all get high.
Okay, so here's some of the fun questions I want to get to you. So what is one of the funniest things you've done today?
This podcast.
All right. What is the meanest thing you've ever done?
Meanest thing I've ever done. Okay, so the thing that takes the cake was when I had a fight with my ex, and I was so angry with him, so angry, and he's really chronically depressed at this point and sleeping a lot. I said something along the lines of like, well, I'm going to go to bed now. Some of us have a job to get up to in the morning, and like, so low. I went so low, and it was the meanest thing I ever did. I don't think I will ever have done anything meaner, and I regret it to this day. So Joseph, if you're listening, I'm still sorry about that. Not that you're talking to me, but whatever.
Well, Joseph, we love you. He follows me, so maybe he'll see this, and we want to send him love, right? At the end of the day, I know we've talked about Joseph in our conversation, and I always know, wherever you are right now, Joseph, that Jordon always speaks about you through love and guides the way he reached out to you through love and compassion. Even if he didn't have it for himself, he would always make sure he would have that for you before he got into any conversation. So
that's very cool.
No, but it's honest. It's very honest, and you were very honest to be vulnerable enough to share those moments with me. So I thank you for that. One word your best friend would use to describe you?
Annoying.
Okay.
Can I recant that one? She wouldn't call me annoying. I think she would probably say accepting, because I think that's where we meet in a good place.
Awesome. What is your, okay, this, I love asking this question. 3 people you secretly can't stand.
Secretly can't stand? I don't secretly can't stand anybody. I up front can't stand people. Number one. I really can't stand. I can't stand, well, I mean, for a long time I secretly couldn't stand Don Cherry, because everybody loves him.
Oops. So that was the alarm.
Yeah. So I guess I can't tell you the last 2 people I can't stand it.
We'll just have to bring you back then, Jordon. That excites me. Yeah. So our 42 minutes are up. I want to say, I know, I miss your face. I am no longer in Toronto right now, so I don't get to see you as much as I would love to, but I'm so glad that we got this. I'm so glad that our souls got to connect. One of the things that you said earlier was that, that song by, I forget his name already. Leonard Cohen, the cracks is where the light gets through. The Chinese, I think the Mong dynasty had this thing where they would, when the vases would break, they would fill it up with gold. So this whole idea that our cracks, we take our cracks and make them beautiful, which I think you have been doing for my life. Like, you are happy to share the cracks in your life to let light in, and then fill it with gold to make sure that, I can continue, or we as a community can continue feeling whole.
Well,
thank you for that.
I'm a big stan of you, Shafiq. Like, I'm a stan. I have a lot of love and respect for you. And I'm very grateful for what you're doing, because you're also doing that work. And you're a wonderful, wonderful person to know. So thank you for this opportunity. It was lovely to talk to you. I can't wait to share this link with everybody at work and be like, ha, I'm a podcast guest. You did nothing.
So then I'll make sure I won't interview them until later on in the year. Right, because they're nothing. They're not invited. Also, let's talk about fashion really quickly, because I think Jordon the fashionista, we're going to go over. So I went out of my way to mix like masculine and femininity because Jordon has a beautiful way of like wearing like a button-up shirt and then like puts on this like uber femme necklace and some bracelets, which he's not doing today, but generally he does.
Hold your horse. No, where my statement necklace, the one that I bought from this one. I think you liked it on Instagram. It was this one.
Oh yeah, amazing. So I would say follow Jordon on Instagram. I'll put a link down there because you can see how Jordon does a beautiful job with fashion and blending masculinity and femininity
And you can
gorgeously.
see as well.
Yeah, he's been lip syncing for his life lately.
People want me to stop. They're like, please stop lip syncing because we're gonna kill you.
No, who's saying that? Get those. I'm gonna go kill him back. You should continue doing this.
Drag Race season 42, baby.
Yeah. Maybe one of our episodes will be Drag Race season 42, lip sync for your life. just an episode. Yeah. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to tune in to seeing our two souls kiki. Listen to us next week when we have an opportunity to journey with another soul. That soul is going to be my sister Salima. Yeah, it's kind of exciting and scary, but thank you for your time, and I love you guys.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.